In this possibly controversial video, I want to share my opinions whether you should be using virtual machines for processing data for e-discovery. Let's start. If you don't want to sit through the whole video listening to my reasons and explanations, the short answer for you is no. You should get real physical stations and use them for processing. But if you want to know my reasoning, let's continue. So for those of you who don't know, virtualization is a way of running multiple servers on one physical server. So why would you do that? There's some really good reasons for that. Let's say you have an accounting server that's just sitting there and it's barely used during most of the time. But maybe once a month the CPU utilization goes up to, I don't know, 10-15% whenever certain end of the month reports are being generated. And there may be another server that's running, let's say, shipping and receiving application, and that's also fairly low CPU usage server. But we keep an accounting server separate from our shipping and receiving servers for security reasons. Different people are supposed to be accessing different servers, they have different permissions, and we want to keep them one as far apart from another. And typical company would have more of these servers that are just sort of sitting there and they're used when needed, but the CPU in them isn't really crunching away at anything. So what we can do in that situation, we can take all those servers, virtualize them, and put them on one physical server. So now, instead of having a bunch of servers with very low CPU utilization, you have one server that's working at its sort of medium pace, maybe 40-50% of CPU utilization, so it's being fairly efficient and it's crunching away, it's running multiple other servers. One of the additional positive benefits of virtualization is server management. When you have all these servers in a virtual environment, you can control them just from sitting at your desk. You can start them, you can stop them, something goes wrong, you can just right click, restart, and server reboots. You no longer have to go into a dark, cold server room, finding the server, powering it off, powering it on. Major pain. You can just do all this management right from your desk. And if something happened to a server, there's a problem, you can make a new virtual server, transfer all the data, and done right from your seat. This ease of management servers is actually VM's biggest weakness. See, once IT department figures out how easy it is to manage servers in the virtual environment, they don't want to do it any other way. No one wants to go into and open up a dusty computer to figure out why it's not booting up, or is the hard drive not working. Maybe it's not booting up and you need to connect the monitor to see what's going on, only to find out it wants you to press F1 and then you have to find the keyboard to plug it in. You plug in the keyboard, it doesn't recognize because it's a USB keyboard, so you gotta find the PS2 keyboard, plug that in, press F1, finally boot it up. No one wants to do that. And this ease of managing virtual machines, it's like a drug. Once you get a taste of it, you cannot get off of it. It's with you, and that's the only way you want to do things. So what a lot of companies done, they've virtualized everything. No matter what it is, it's virtual, it's done, it's easy. You manage it from your desk. What's the problem with that setup? Well, for a lot of cases, there is none. It's great, easy, you need less people to manage things, your management gets quicker, problems get resolved quicker. However, virtualization is not meant for high performance applications. And that's one thing everyone forgets. Virtualization is to consolidate low performance servers onto one machine to make CPU utilization more efficient. When you take high performance computers and put them into one cluster, they're all taking up as much CPU as possible, and now they're all become slower and slower. Most of the processing software these days uses this model called distributed processing, where they automatically send work to multiple servers that data is being processed on. And each one of those servers, once they receive a job, they use up 100% of the CPU or as much as they possibly can. And when you put those servers into a virtual environment and each one of them is using as much CPU power as they can, they take all the CPU power from the host that they live on, and that essentially slows down any other servers that the environment may be shared with, such as an accounting application or something else. How does it affect different applications more specifically? Well, if you're using relativity, you have to pay per server. And when you're paying per server, you need to extract as much power out of that server as possible. And when you virtualize it and share it with other servers, you're not getting what you paid for. You're getting only part of the CPU power. And what relativity suggests, if you are putting a virtual server, you should put one VM station per physical server, which kind of doesn't make sense, right? If you gonna have a server, just put it on that server. Why would you virtualize it? Well, some companies have it sort of as a policy where they virtualize everything. So now you have one virtual server, one on one real server. Kind of weird, but I guess that's where the ease of management comes in. So now you can manage those servers better. But of course, your IT department will not do that. They will never give you a physical server for one virtual server. That will never happen. And what eventually happens is you have to purchase more processing servers. And in the relativity case, you would have to pay for more licenses to buy those servers. Where in fact, if you were to use the physical servers, you could get more power out of them and they could process faster if you just to have 2 or 3 physical servers as opposed to needing to have 4 or 5 virtual. So in case of relativity, you're better off with physical servers, and that's exactly what they recommend you do. When it comes to low processing, it gets a little more tricky because different tasks could be distributed to your computers in a different way. So for example, if you have tasks such as endorsing or OCR, well, that's pretty easy to distribute. And if IT gives you lots of virtual servers that are fairly slow, you could just check them off the list and send the job there, and it's sort of not that big of a deal. But when you're trying to do imaging or you're QCing for production, having multiple servers isn't really helpful. What you want is you want to have a fewer servers that are fast, not lots of slow servers. And when you say to IT like, hey, things are running kind of slow, what can we do? They say, hey, we'll make you more VMs. Well, great, but now that we have more VMs, we need to hire more people to man those VMs, because when you're using law, it's a fairly hands-on product. It's not like you just run it and go away. You need to monitor it, you need to QC it, you need to make sure batches don't crash, stations have to be rebooted. So anytime you add more VMs, you need to hire more people to actually monitor this. And again, we're back to the same situation where having slower VMs costs you money, because now you need more people to run all those stations, where if you had fewer but faster stations, you would be more efficient, and one person could run 3 or 4 stations and they could get their stuff done quicker. So to sum it all up, processing is a CPU intensive process and it should not be virtualized. You should not be running processing on VMs. Get yourself some real stations, buy server class hardware if you can. If not, get i7s, put at least 16 gigs of RAM, and get SSDs. SSDs are cheap. There is no reason not to have them. Small SSDs are better than large physical hard drives. Unfortunately, ease of management on IT side takes precedence over experience of end users. That is an unfortunate fact that we have to live with. I encourage you to fight for your right to run physical, real stations for your processing needs. Thank you for listening to my rant. I'll see you in the next video.